Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Eljay Johnsen Show. This show airs every single weekend, every Saturday at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, unless specified at another time over on my Twitter at the Eljay Johnsen, where there are guest announcements every Tuesday and updates to the time or updates to any delays whenever they're applicable. And of course, if you have any questions of the week, make sure to send them to my email, ljjohnson@gmail.com. Okay. So, I am incredibly excited for my next guest. He is a renowned MOCist in the BIONICLE community. He is also a frequent exhibitor at Brickfair events, along with, I believe, I want to say Bricks Cascade, but I'm fairly certain that's wrong. But you know him, you love him. It is Patrick Biggs, otherwise known as DV, DVD, some variant thereof. How you doing?
Doing good, how are you?
I'm doing good, as we just discussed, it's hot, but manageable.
It is manageable.
Yeah, no, it's working out. It's always good to start a conversation just talking about the weather. Just kind of, that's the one thing everyone can kind of relate to, it's weather.
It's a good customer service conversation because everybody wants to talk about the weather. And so when in doubt, just be like, oh my god, that weather today sure is weather.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I'm personally very glad to be out of customer service for the moment. Not fun. Not exactly a enjoyable profession most days.
You know, it can be stressful, but it's rewarding. I enjoy what I do.
Yeah, that's fair enough. There are the occasional, sometimes you'll get people that are just unbelievably nice. Just so pleasant, just puts a spring in your step for the rest of the day.
I don't know if I'd go that far about myself, but you know.
Oh, well, fair enough. But, yeah, let's go ahead and get into things. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everyone what you do, how you got into the community, and how you got into LEGO in general.
All right, well, as discussed, my name is Patrick. I do go by DVD on Flickr and Instagram, and DV on BZPower. It's a joking variation of my old username, which was Darth Vader. Because when you are 14, creating a username on bzpower.com, you just go, oh, I like Star Wars, that sounds great. And so I have been a member of the online community since January 2002 when I joined BZPower. I have been staff on BZPower since 2008. I have been going to Brickfair, Virginia every year since it started in 2008. Bricks Cascade is the correct convention. I do help run that one here in Portland, and I have since 2012 when it started. I've been to every Bricks Cascade and every Brickfair, Virginia. I've also attended and displayed at BrickCon, BrickCan, and Brick Fiesta. I've been around for, like I said, since 2002 when I was 14. So, which if you want to do the math out there, it does put me in my 30s, which is very exciting for me.
Wow.
Before BIONICLE came out, I grew up playing with Lego bricks and having a good time, and I had all the Throwbots at one point in time, or Slicers for all of our European friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw a standee at Walmart with the image of Kopaka on top, standing there on top of the mountain with a sword and a shield, and I was like, well, gotta have that. And that was where, most people probably would have hit their dark ages, but thanks to BIONICLE, I have never had one of those, and I've just been hanging out ever since.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that sounds pretty straightforward, pretty easy to recant, but, very classic tale. So, you've obviously enough been a fan of BIONICLE since the get-go, and you've also been in the community quite a bit longer than I have, because I was in 2005, you were in 2002, so it's about a 2 or 3 year difference. How's it changed? How have you noticed it change over all these years, and especially in between Generation 1 and Generation 2?
Well, it got a lot smaller.
Really?
I mean, there were days way back in the G1 heyday where you wouldn't even be able to log on to BZPower because of the tens of thousands of other people trying to get on at the same time.
I remember that. Oh gosh, that was awesome.
there were days back then when, I mean, especially back when I used to moderate, well, I still moderate blogs on BZPower, but there are a lot less of them to worry about than there used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there used to be so much work to do on the back end and so much moderation to do and so many things to read and see every single day that even sometimes on, like as a staff member on BZPower, even in like 2008, it was sometimes hard to actually interact with the community because you were doing so much on the back, like so much, like there were just, like I said, tens of thousands of people and hundreds of blogs, and they were all active. And there are definitely a lot less people now than there were then. I think what's been really interesting to watch is as message boards and forums have become less a part of internet culture and social media has really taken off, is that there's almost a splintering of the online community, and not so much even that it used to be in one place and now it's in 8 different places because everybody went to different places, that all these different social media hubs have almost organically grown their own separate communities that interact but not over, like they overlap but don't necessarily interact. And that's been really interesting. I mean, my first Brickfair in 2008, all of the BIONICLE fans were BZPower members or BZPower staff members, you know, like all 10 of us. And the first 5 years, if you were there, it was because of BZPower. But now there's, you know, there are Biogram kids, and there are Instagram, like Instagram builders, and there are the BZPower people, and there's the TTV board people, and a lot of those people interact online. You know, they all, like, we all have different social media presences, but we're not necessarily all came up in the same communities anymore, and that's been really interesting to watch.
Yeah, no, that's a really excellent point. Not one I think I've considered often, because like I'm used to a lot of people back in the day. If you were a fan of BIONICLE and you were part of the community, you were on BZPower, clean and easy. Everybody that I know, who I've known for a long time, was a BZPower member, and we all grew up knowing how great it was to be on the most active BIONICLE website in BIONICLE's heyday. So. But yeah, nowadays you get a lot of different people, like Mask Posting Podcast. They're entirely from themselves, from the Facebook community, from Mask Posting. That community just grew itself on Facebook. Biogram, as you mentioned. So yeah, that's a very interesting change to bring up. Speaking of G2, kind of want to get this out of the way. What did you think of it?
I mean, honestly, I loved G2. I mean, I was a deep G1 fan. I mean, I'm primarily known for building things, but I mean, I read every book and every comic. And one of the like 4 bookmarked like sub forums on BZPower I had was storylines and theories, and so my knowledge of the lore is unfortunately deep. And so I paid a lot of attention, but I had a lot of complaints, and a lot of, especially as it went on, it changed to a point where it wasn't for me anymore, which is fine. But the aesthetic changed over the years, and the different styles and different looks and different things like that. But the G2 sets were basically everything I could have ever asked for visually. They were a great balance between the more Technic-heavy, like, original builds and the, like, smooth Hero Factory shell design, which I also adore. And so, like, melding the two was so cool, and it was so great. And all the launch activities were so cool, and going to New York City Comic Con and seeing the giant system-built Mask of Creation just right there in the center of the hall. And, like, all of that was great, and I really enjoyed, like, I enjoyed the books, I enjoyed the online videos. I wish that we had gotten more, you know, I feel like the Matt New Online game is the unsung hero of the original one when it comes to marketing.
Oh yeah.
Like, we all think of it as like, oh, this great thing that helped immerse us, but I think even on Lego's end, they're still baffled by it being so popular.
Yeah.
And it would have been great for something like that. I just feel like it was a line that had a lot of potential, and I would have loved to see where else it could have gone, especially if we'd gotten the full original 3-year count. And I'm still in mourning.
Yeah, it'll be I believe 2 years since the cancellation this year.
Yeah, it'll be just as long as it ran.
Oh gosh, I didn't need you to say that. Oh no, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a sad point.
It's been gone as long as it was here.
Oh, nuts. Dang. Yeah, no, that's kind of... So regarding the G2 sets, you have what is considered, I think, and I think you and I would agree on this to an extent, but you have what I believe many would consider a controversial opinion. And that is regarding, well, clearly your favorite piece from Gen 2. The Uniter chess piece. Obviously enough, I agree. I loved the aesthetic that they went with for Generation 2's first wave. The Toa Masters, I think, are some of the best CCBS canister sets we've ever gotten. I definitely feel there was a downgrade with Uniters because they really cluttered the torso and cluttered kind of the entire look. What do you think? Kind of elaborate on your stance there.
Oh no, I agree. I still have not used that weird connector chest piece, the beast things. I still haven't found a great place to use those in a MOC, even though I've started MOCs a dozen times trying to use it somehow, like as a center, as a focal piece, and each time I'm like, I don't like this, I'm gonna do something different.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of like how that piece looks once I actually had it in hand. Like I think one of my BZPower reviews when they first came out, it kind of reminded me of an old-timey radio microphone. Like kind of had that like almost graphic quality to it.
Yeah.
But that chest piece, like the actual torso, like armor piece, that thing was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And there were just so many. It felt like there was almost the idea of they were like, well, the original fans like pistons, so let's put pistons everywhere.
Yeah, even where pistons don't make any sense.
Yeah, and I'm still kind of bummed about it because I really like that superhero chest plate piece, and I love the prints on the Uniter torsos, especially that blue and red one on Tahu with a little pink line through it.
Mm-hmm.
And having that as just a like separate superhero chest piece would have made my life so complete.
Yeah, I personally, the chest printing on the Masters was still, to this day, it's a little perplexing. I think that the printing on the Uniters, I love the incorporation of like the Nuva symbols, but
oh yeah,
but I agree. I liked having it separate. I liked having it its own piece, so you can do with it what you will. And they really kind of consolidated and cluttered it for the Uniters. And I know this is kind of a similar opinion you hold of, if not one of, then probably the most revered G1 Titan, Brutaka. I know a lot of people love Brutaka. I've said in the past, Brutaka's maybe a second place as far as Titans go. However, you definitely have an interesting opinion. I'd love to have you elaborate on it.
Man, I didn't know you were going to do me dirty like this.
Oh, no, are you kidding me? I love discussing this. See, I actually think you have a really interesting point. I think it's a really good point.
Brutaka is probably my... Man, I can't say it's my least favorite, like, larger set, because there were so many bad ones as it went on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like Gadunka is just so terrible. And Hydraxon is just a Nika torso with some tubes and some longer limbs. But Brutaka does visually everything that I hate in not only set design, but also in areas of the building community. And it's not a popular opinion, and it doesn't make me popular when I say it. And people always get mad at me when I say it. But it doesn't make any sense to me visually. Mm-hmm. It's so messy, and it's design language. Like, the pieces don't speak to each other. They're all in weird places. He's just got random spikes coming out of everywhere. Mm-hmm. The mask is massive. It's so big, and it's so messy.
Yeah.
And the thing that perplexes me the most out of all of it, and it's the thing they did on several sets, is just using the Brutaka feet as hands. And they stick out of the wrist so weird. Mm-hmm. And it makes, like, on that socket joint and the way it sticks out, and I hate literally everything about how that looks. And you're going to have so many people commenting about how wrong I am and how big of a jerk I am because Brutaka's everybody's favorite set, which is great.
Well, it's not my favorite. See, that's the thing. I think that's a really good point. as a general rule, because I reviewed them all, I like all Bionicle sets, Qatar notwithstanding. But I have a enjoyment for Brutaka, but I think that's a really good point to bring up. There is not a cohesive aesthetic for Brutaka. There are things that don't make sense from him, and the things you pointed out as issues are very clearly issues. There's obviously something to be said for enjoying a set and then recognizing that there are problems with it. Because as Bionicle went on, it never really had an aesthetic, which is why whenever you talk to people about the G1 aesthetic versus the G2 aesthetic, you can't really talk about a G1 aesthetic because it had several. Like, 01,
Yeah.
0103 had a consistent through line. But after that, then it kind of starts getting a little mixed up, and I think Brutaka is a really good example of that. And so that's why I like hearing that point of view, because it's unpopular, certainly, but there's a lot of merit to it. At least I think.
I mean, I obviously think so too, or it wouldn't be my opinion. But if I've read one complaint about myself on the internet in the various communities, my hatred of the Brutaka set is probably like the second or third most vocalized criticism of me as a person.
Is it?
It really is.
I was about to say, that's unusual. But it's like I said, it's a sacred cow, and that's cool, and I get it. Like I said, it's just not for me. And everyone always comes back with like, oh, they don't have to have human proportions, they're robot creatures. And I'm like, that's fine. I just want the proportions to work with each other, like with themselves, and I don't feel like they do on that set. That's a really interesting way of putting
He's a
that.
sacred cow. He's Brutaka.
Also, by the way, sorry, my Madison, who is new Kaya on BZPower and has also been at all of those conventions with me, just got home, so she is now hanging out in the background making comments. So if you hear somebody else back there, that is her.
Got it. I'm going to cherish Brutaka for the rest of my life. That is unbelievably hilarious to me.
Excuse me, you mean he's utterly hilarious?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, well, we should steer this conversation elsewhere.
Please. But yeah, no, I think that's the valid points, and I think that again, there's something to be said. You can enjoy something like, for instance, I enjoy Liwa Mata. I like the set Liwa Mata. It's my favorite Lego set, period. That being said, it's not a good set. It doesn't have good articulation. It's very stiff. It's very loose. Those are both things that are problems with the set in just different ways. It's not a good set by modern standards, especially when compared to the Master. But I still like it. There's something to be said for that, and I think that it's perfectly valid to go out there and say, hey, personally, I'm not a big fan of this for X, Y, and Z reasons, and if they're right, then it's worth acknowledging. So that's why I wanted to bring that up and kind of have you say that, because I think that's a really interesting look, not only to your mindset regarding sets, but the way that you mock, which is something I want to get into next.
I mean, just real quick regarding your love of Liwa, A, I would never have known, and B, I mean, it really helps that those original 6 masks, they did something that none of the masks ever did. And they were so iconic, and they were so visually simple, and they were so clean, but they're so iconic.
Mm-hmm. They have a great silhouette.
Yeah, and nothing that ever came again ever touched, even came close to touching those. Maybe I'll give an honorary mention to the Evoki, but which is a mask I love, and I think it's one of the few that actually really captured that like original clean tribal look. But otherwise, they just got busier, and they got busier, and they got bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that easily the original 6, there's a reason that everyone kind of gravitates around them. And obviously, there are other fan favorites, like the Ignika, the Vahi, and so on and so forth. But you're right. I 100% agree. The original 6 are easily the most well-designed of the masks, and of those 6, the Mirio is just it's heads and tails above all of them. easily. That's just, I'm sorry, it's just truth. I had to get that out there. Anyway.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the Kakuma, which is why I have it tattooed on my shoulder. But
yeah, I saw that. I remember. I haven't seen it in person, obviously, but yeah. All right. Let me see. So let's go ahead and move into mocking in general, because obviously now you have a lot of mocks, and you've been mocking for quite a while.
Just a few.
The one I have on screen right now is Akimu, or it's not the full name, but it's the one I have the file named after. It's Akimu with the kind of red cloak, the transparent light blue mask of creation, the hammer, and then like flame in the hand. You know which one?
Yep, I do.
Tell me a little bit about this, because I've seen a lot of people discuss mocks that you have made, and they have, I would say, a style. It's a very clean, kind of almost clothing aesthetic. But go ahead and, in your words, kind of explain what you aim to do with your mocks.
I aim to build things that are cool, that I like, that I hope other people will like as well. Which is kind of, I mean, just first point is I build things that I like, and then I hope other people like them. And if other people don't like them, I want to know why. And if they don't like it, it's just like, that's not my design sensibility. I'm like, fair enough. If they're like, oh, I don't like that because, the color layering here is bad, or, like this part doesn't speak to me, like doesn't speak to this part of the mock, then great. Then maybe I'll keep that in mind when I go through the next one and, make it better, because I take the value and the feedback of my peers very seriously. It's kind of an artistic medium, and so I do build in the hopes to get better every time. But outside of that, I think it almost happened on accident recently, in the last probably year and a half, 2 years. I've been building almost more like clothing-oriented models. They feel almost more action figure-y than anything I've ever done in the past. More, I don't know, more like a high-end action figure, like a Figma or something. But it definitely wasn't a thing. It's not definitely the look I've always gone for, even though I've always been trying to get closer to a more realistic styled look without it hitting that realism point. Like maybe a more like the way like Avatar or is realistic, but it's a cartoon.
I see.
Like kind of like that same kind of concept. Like it's realism interpreted through a more cartoonish media. I've loved the smooth, more sleek like textures and designs since as long as I can remember. Mid 2000s, I was building with just a heavy amount of system slopes and curves and tiles, and trying to fill all those spaces that Bionicle pieces left weirdly open or weirdly textured. I mean, my Hipori Tohu mock from 2007 is probably still one of my most recognizable models. And I think it's probably also the one that is the closest, like visually and thematically, to what I'm doing still these days, even though it's like style and building techniques is radically different. I don't even know if that makes sense, but what I set out to do, and I kind of think of them as my coat dudes, just kind of what we talk about them as in my mocking circles. And I didn't set out to build several of them. I built the Admiral with the transparent Mask of Fire first, because I've always just really liked that naval officer look. And especially the way it's often been, like Western naval apparel has been interpreted through like Eastern media and through like, especially like in, Japanese or Korean or even Chinese animations, the way they take that Western military stylization and then interpret it back through their lens. And so I built that one first, and I was like, oh, and it was, influenced pretty strongly too by my friend Corvin's artwork. People might know him as well, as Corvin, but also as like, was it Vizoc's friend on BZPower?
Yeah.
And Brain?
And yeah, Farron.
I don't know.
I don't know how he actually says that username, but he was a pretty well-known storyline and RPG and artist on BZPower a long time ago. You know, he's a set designer on the City team now for Lego, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he grew up in the BZPower and now he works for Lego. So anybody can achieve your dream.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you were on BZPower and wanted to be a set designer. Like I was talking with Andrew last week, there's a high turnover rate of BZPower members becoming Lego set designers. Like at least bare minimum 3 that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so there's at least 3, if not 4 or 5. I mean,
Yeah.
that and like there's several from Legoland, California too, who have moved on from being, you know, at Legoland, California, which is owned by Merlin, to becoming set designers over there too, which is pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he built a lot. Like he drew a lot of art based on the like RPG characters, but he always has several that are very naval and very like old captainy looking things. And so I have several of them in my inspiration folder, and I just sat down and I was like, well, I'm gonna build this finally, and it came together really well, and I was really happy with it. But one of the ways my brain works for MOCs is it goes, that's great, and I like those designs, but what can I do with them differently, and how can I keep them moving forward, and how can I keep evolving them?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Akimu that you're talking about is the second one I built, and my thought was, how can I take that naval look and that basic coat design and use it instead for something maybe a little bit more like sci-fi or even cyberpunk / that weird interplay between cyberpunk and like high medieval fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's got a vague Guardians of the Galaxy inspiration to it, which everyone pointed out immediately, which is perfectly fine and valid and definitely there. Like I can't pretend that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I got halfway through it and I was like, you know, this would be a pretty cool Akimu with that glowing blue mask, and then giving him like a light construct hammer and like magic coming out of his hand as if he's using the mask's power to create the hammer to create things with. Like the whole idea with that is that everything that is trans blue on that is, you know, the active mask. It's the actual like magic happening, since that whole magical energy thing was such a big part of G2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, like how can I bring that to life? How can I bring that concept to life? And then from there, it was just, all right, like, you know, I have a dark blue coat dude. It was like, oh, cool. Like, how can I make this coat style look less naval and less fantasy? And how can I make it look more, you know, Edwardian or Jacobin or, you know, that whole like Renaissance period look? And I was like, let's give him a fancy cane and a monocle. That'd be neat. You know, and until recently, the blue one was my second most popular MOC on Flickr by favorite counts, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's neat to see something that I built more recently become, you know, just keep growing. And then BZPower had a contest, and my friend Tony, who's Lord Oblivion, he was like, it was like, hey, pair up with somebody and build something together. He messaged me. He's like, hey, why don't you build a cool coat Takanuva, and I'm gonna build a big beastly Makuta. And I was like, deal. So I built a Takanuva in that style, and then he had to drop out, and then a different friend messaged me, and they're like, hey, are you just looking for a partner? And I was like, well, I've got this Takanuva. And he was like, cool, I'm gonna build a Makuta. And so we built, you know, Takanuva and a Makuta, and that worked out nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of a thing where it's like, oh, well, this worked really well last time, but how can I make it work better, and how can I improve on it? I know there's an idea that reusing concepts and reusing designs is not creative, but for me, each one of them is exploring a different avenue and a different idea. Like it's in my head, and I have to figure out where else I can take it before I can move on from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always trying to reinterpret that and see where else I can take it and where else I can go with it. And there's also a part of me that just says, you know, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there are times someone's like, hey, just, that's the same hand design since you've been using since 2006. I'm like, yeah, if it's not broken, like, why fix it?
And I mean, it's not like these are the only MOCs you've made. And I do want to touch on some of the other ones because I do have some pictures of some of the ones that incorporate system and even some non-humanoid ones. The Skull Charata, the Lord of Spiders. We'll get to that one. But yeah, no, I think especially with the Akimu MOC you were talking about just a moment ago, I think that it is a really excellent example of, how, real quickly, full disclaimer, I need to do this every time I have someone in the Bionicle community on red axles and blue pins. Your thoughts, just briefly?
Oh, I don't care.
Fair enough.
If at this point in my life, I have way more of both of those
please
than I have
elaborate
the other
if you have
colors.
more to say.
And so I'm just like, I'm going to use them. And I have this weird division in my head between serious models and less serious models that it doesn't necessarily showcase in how I present models online.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm like, oh man, this one's really serious. Like, I want this one to have just like this real important, I want this one to be important. I'm like this is one of the ones I worked. I'm baiting this one to be like one of my important works that I want like people to notice and for it to maybe get blogged places or something. I'll be like, all right, where's my container of the black pins and the black axles? Where's all that stuff at?
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'll use red ones or gray ones or blue ones. I don't care.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's basically how I look at it. But at the same time, I've gotten a lot of flack for in my reviews bringing up that red axles and blue pins are generally considered to be negative on sets because they kind of polka dotty on sets that don't feature that color scheme. And for instance, this Akimu MOC, I would say the color scheme is red and black with highlights of gold. And that's already a really solid color scheme as it stands. But then you throw this light transparent blue in. And the reason it works is because it's accented and highlighted and distributed in a way it's a cohesive appearance and it's solid. So that's why it doesn't clash, it doesn't diminish it. So if you say, oh, well, this set's color is red, black, gold, and blue, on paper, it's like, what? But when you see it, it works. And I think this is a really great illustration of how color layering and where you put colors matters a lot.
If there's one area that I probably harp on the most when talking to other people about builds, is its organization of color, and especially with me trying to represent clothing. At that point, if you throw a random piece of a different color in there without purpose or thought, even if it's just a connector, a lot of times you're like, oh well, just I've ruined the illusion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. So I think it's interesting to make note of, especially for keeping in mind for discussions regarding colors, color theories, color layering, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's always the other area too, though, where it comes to they switched to almost predominantly red pins and blue pins and red axles. God, 12 years ago. And there's a point in there where someone commenting and saying, I can't believe this is a good MOC, but you used red axles and blue pins, and that makes it a bad MOC. There's a point there where it gets a little dicey, where you're like, well, that's what I've got. Do you expect me to go out and spend $40 on Bricklink to buy these things? For somebody who's just casually building and hanging out for fun, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like you're being kind of a jerk if you're like, hey, go buy these other pieces to fix it. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that also gets into a much broader conversation about MOC critique. I know that this was especially a big deal last year, almost exactly a year ago. There's a heavy discussion about posting MOCs online and whether or not posting them online warrants them for critique. Do you have any standing on that, or?
I think if you put your stuff in a public place, you need to be prepared for public comments in whichever way that they come at you. I mean, I'm certainly not, immune to having negative things said about me or posted about on my things, and it's, that's life. Mm-hmm. And if somebody comes at you that you're like, I really don't care for the way that you communicate with me. I mean, I can think of several names of people in the community who I just think of are just overwhelmingly negative people. Just block them and move on.
Yeah. I think we're thinking of
If
the same
they're
person.
probably, I think 98% of your audience probably is too.
Mhm.
But I mean, like, there comes to a point too where it's like you post it in public. It's open. Like, if there are comments like enabled, people can say what they want, and you can moderate the comments and remove the ones you don't like. You can ignore the ones you don't like, or you can engage in a way that just says, you know what, like, I'm not looking for critique or criticism, and you're welcome to leave them, but I'm going to ignore them. And I think that's valid too. You know, there are people who take this a lot less seriously than I do, and that's fine. I don't leave big structured critiques on most things unless there feels like there's a reason to. I don't go out of my way to leave long thought out like thesis thoughts on people's work unless it feels like they're like, not like, oh, you were asking for it, but like in a way where they're like, hey, like, you know, what can I do better? Where else can I go with this? People who are like, hey, like, I'm really trying to become a serious player and a serious like person in this community. Like, at that point, I'm like, hey, like, let's do this. Like, let's be this, and I expect the same in return. Like, I would never be a person who's like, hey, leave me all this feedback, and then I'm just gonna tell all of you that you suck if you leave me feedback. I mean, I might just like other people and be like, hey, if you don't like that feedback, ignore it. There's definitely feedback I get on builds. I'm like, no, that's wrong, and I don't care. But there's other things too that I may not engage with it in that moment, but I'll be thinking about it on my next one. I'll be like, you know what, like that, they were right about that on that last one, so let's make sure that's not an issue on this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think there's a point where I think sometimes people get the idea that, you know, maybe they've become more popular, or maybe they've become more of a personality, and that frees them from like a critique, or like a critique is designed to bring them down or to bring them back to earth. And I don't think that's real generally. I don't know, maybe people leave comments to be like, I think you're popular and I hate you. But I think a lot of times people usually leave critiques to be like, hey, like, you're popular and you're a big person, and like, they're like, I don't need to leave something positive because you know you're amazing. So like, here's just the things that bother me about it. But I think sometimes people can take that the wrong way as well and be like, oh, I'm just getting all attacked now because I'm popular. I mean, I'm sure I went through that at some point in time too. I mean, like I said, I've been posting online since 2002.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And I think there's also a bit of a popular thought process alongside all of this, where harsh critique is, in some instances, an excuse to be harsh, and a lot of people often focus on being brutal honesty. There we go. They focus more on being brutal than being honest. And
yeah, no, I would agree. I think there's a point where, I don't know, I think about just, there's always that phrase like truth without love isn't truth. And I think that if your goal is to tear somebody down, then you're going to be brutal versus being honest. And if your goal is to bring somebody up, you're going to be honest and not brutal. And I think when someone's like, I'm just being brutally honest, I need you to know that this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, they're not being constructive. They're designing it to bring you down. But somebody's kind of like, hey, like, the anatomy here doesn't make sense to me. Like, this doesn't seem like this flows into this very well. Like, I don't see where you're going with. Like, I feel like that's engaging in a conversation, because you can always, like, I mean, I took photography classes in high school, a little bit in college, and the thing I always remember is you'd go up there and you'd put your piece up there and you'd be like, hey, like, time for criticism and comments. Like, what do people have to say? And someone would leave you, like, they'd be like, oh, like, I think this looks bad, or I don't like this, or like, this seems out of place. I remember my high school photography teacher, his response was always, all right, defend your piece. Like, either show from where you were coming from on why what they're saying is wrong, or what your thought process is on why you did that, or own up to that being wrong.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to go about it. Always be open to critique and engage, and just kind of learn from the experience. And even for those that go out and critique, make it a learning experience. Try and help others realize where you're coming from, and see if you guys can come to an agreement. Maybe understand where the mock was coming from, or where the creator was at that point, and Just try and make it a productive interaction always. Just pleasant, positive, understanding, growing of abilities.
Yeah, well, I think there's this idea too that, like, I don't know, I've heard people be like, oh, well, I don't care about criticism or comments. Like, I know I'm good and I just build for myself. And I'm like, I build for myself. Like, people are like, oh, I feel like, I've had people be like, oh man, now that you've designed this coat, like your last 3 mocks are they're porridge. They're all boring and they all look the same. And, like, that's neat. I like how they look, so I don't care. But B, like, there's this idea that you can't both build for yourself or create art that you predominantly like first and foremost, and also solicit feedback. Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen people be like, oh, like, I build for myself, and so I don't care what other people say about my builds or about this mock. Like, 90% of the community might hate it, but I love it. And I'm like, I love that you're proud of what you built. I love people who are proud of what, like, you should always be proud of it. Like, I don't post something if I'm not proud of it. Like, I'm always proud of what I build, and there's always this part of me. I mean, and Malcolm just walked out of the room, but she can attest to the fact that I literally, every time I finish something, I ask her like a dozen times, like, do you think this is good? Like, do you like this part of it? Like, do you think this works? Like, how do you feel about this? And it helps because she's got an art degree and an art background, and she, builds and draws and paints and makes quilts, and she's extremely more talented than I am. But like, it, like, I want people to like what I build, but like, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't build it. Mm-hmm. And so I still want people to engage with it, and I want it to mean something to people. And if it doesn't mean enough to people to comment on or to say how they feel about it, or to be like, you know what, but at the same time, I like this, but I don't like this, then I don't know, I kind of feel like it failed a little bit, even though I still like it or I wouldn't have posted it.
I can see that. I can understand where you're coming from with that. Yeah. And I feel that's a good way to also touch upon kind of on another one of the creations that you have, which I believe would kind of intertwine with this conversation now. The Skull Charata, Lord of the Spiders. This is, I would say, looking at your creations, one of your more unusual, irregular mocks. Not because there's a dip in quality, simply because it's not a standard humanoid figure that most people attribute to you. It's a very abnormal, it's a very abstract, it is a humanoid upper body, but then you have the head, you have the legs, the abdomen, the thorax. Tell me a little bit about the thought process behind this one and the differences you faced with this as opposed to other ones.
Well, I mean, I can't talk about that one without touching on the fact that it is kind of a revamp of a quick build I did in 2014. 2014 with with the pieces that I got pre BIONICLE G2 announcement. And that was a mock that I built to be like, well, I have this cool spider mask, but I don't have any faces that they go on, but I want to use it. So, like, I got to do something with it. So, like, you probably can't tell in the original photo, but there is like a socket-built head with a ball joint in the center for eyes on the old 2014 version. And so I did that as just as a quick build to have something built to showcase some of the new parts before New York City Comic Con, so I got something to post online. Because LEGO is big on being like, hey, have a bunch of stuff ready, so that way when we announce it, you can post everything, and we can be like, oh my god, look how cool these parts are. And I was like, oh my god, these parts are really cool. And I'd been watching a lot of the Clone Wars and a lot of Rebels, and I liked the Spider Darth Maul, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. And so I built that, and then didn't touch it again, and was just like, it's kind of an okay mock. Like, I don't even display it at most conventions. I just built it real quick. But this new one, I looked at it and I was like, this is something that's begging to be done more seriously, and to be done more cohesively, and to be done more. But you're right. It's very different from the rest of the stuff I normally build. Even though I'll be honest, the internal workings of that upper torso are the exact same as all the coat dudes. It's just it's just different pieces added on to make a different shape. That's all it is. And the inner working of the spider torso itself is just this spider torso off the old one with brand new shaping and brand new ideas and brand new part usage.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea, it was, I wanted it to be creepy. I wanted it to feel, vaguely, I use vaguely at its most stretched term possible because I don't really think it looks a lot like it, but vaguely Miyazaki-ish. Like I wanted to have that like dangerous, like elemental, like spiritual feel to it, where you're like, I believe that this is an old, like dangerous, but not necessarily good or bad,
Just
like
ancient
creature. Yeah, like just a presence, like it's a thing that existed and will continue to exist.
I can really see that influence in the face and the head, with a lot of the kind of long white strands coming off of the head and the kind of ornamental spikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fast builder, and I have to get that out there right now because there are people who throw mocks together in a day, and they're like, "This is my 1 day mock," and I spent a week and a half on that mask and that hair, literally just on those portions. I would just sit down for a few hours, and I would just literally just continue figuring out how I liked the shaping of that hair, and if I did or didn't, and then I'd put it down, and the next day I'd come back to it for 4 hours, and I'd be like, well, and like a week and a half later, I was like, well, now I have a head. And so, I mean, there's a lot of thought that went into that. But at the same time, I do a lot of exploring and a lot of play in it, where it's like, well, does this piece work? No. Does this piece work? Yes. And you work further down, and then you go back and you go, well, that piece worked then, but now it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole mock is it's very much an exploration. It's very much how can I do something that's both me and not me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I build lots of animals all the time, and I've got that spider that I'm going to bring to Brickfair that everybody adores, even though I built it in 2005.
Well, obviously, I mean, it's easily... I don't have a picture of it outside of the collage of mocks you're bringing to Brickfair, but, I mean, I've seen it in person. I would have given it an award right then and there, obviously. I mean, come on. Goodness. Well, wait till
it's very popular. It's just it's a big gray spider, and people are afraid of spiders or fascinated by spiders or love spiders.
Children from 30 feet away and go, "Look at that spider, Mom!" and book it towards it, and you're just like, "Oh, put one down for spider."
Mm-hmm.
It was bad.
They kept a tally at this last Bricks Cascade, and I wasn't at the table, of how many people pointed out the spider, and gosh. it was dozens. Dozens.
I think, yeah. And that was only when we were there,
yeah, because we weren't even there for all hours.
Oh my goodness.
But to speak to your point though too about it being kind of different from what I usually build, I mean, one of the comments on the the Flickr page for Charata is, "This was unexpected."
I see, yeah.
And and I posted it, and people were like, "Where did that come from?" And I was like, I mean, it came from the parts that I have.
Yeah, I have another picture up here. You titled it, I believe on Flickr, "Fancy Gents and Mythical Beasts." It's, the coat dudes. And then right below them, you have a lot of creatures. Like, you have a dragon, you have a mock of, oh man, her name escapes me right now.
Keiru?
There we go, yes. And then you have a dinosaur. And it's like, they're very clearly not humanoid mocks in any regard. But there's still, you see the design process through them. So you obviously have a repertoire of other creations.
I do. But if there is one thing people definitely think about me first and foremost as, it's definitely the humanoids. Mm-hmm. It's definitely the more... I mean, I've always been fascinated. I've always loved the aesthetic of the original Bionicle sets, and if there's one thing I've built probably more of than anything else, and maybe more than anybody else, it's what we used to call Neo Toa, which are just, high-end, super custom, Toa, that were just they were ours. They were super Toa. They were cool Toa. They were like our own things. And so like in my mocking friends, my serious building friends, and our Discord servers and places, they still make fun of me for using Bionicle masks all the time. And at the end of the day, I really don't care because I love Bionicle masks. And I even think of like I said, the coat dudes. I even think of them as they're just modern day glorified Neo Toa.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I think it's a neat design, and I think that it's always kind of fun to look at what Bionicle characters would be like with clothes. Like, I know that's been kind of emulated a lot over the years, especially from what I've seen, BZPower comics form. But seeing it done in MOCs, I think it isn't as common. So to have found that and to be known for that, I think that's cool, personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have any complaints.
Let me see. I will take this opportunity. I'll let everyone know. By the way, if you're listening live, go ahead, ask your questions now in the live YouTube chat. You can also head on over to Twitter at the Eljay Johnsen using the hashtag the Eljay Johnsen Show. Now, real quick, I did want to touch upon. I don't know if this is more of a recent venture for you. I believe it is, but right now I have a Ruinous Read up on screen, and the reason is because it's obviously a construction figure interconnecting, kind of interacting, what was the proper terminology, with a system, kind of not modular, I forget the term for it, but it's this kind of dioramic scene. And if you could kind of elaborate, what's it like going from very construction heavy MOCs to making MOCs that are either incorporating a lot of system or really playing off a system? They kind of mutually exist and work with each other really, really well. What's that process like?
It's different. I have no real history with doing landscaping in system, so that and the Portland stag sign that's jumping over like the flowers, both of those I was like, well, this is neat. I have no idea what I'm doing. I spent a lot of time looking at random like vignettes and other builds from system builders, being like, so that's how they do landscaping. Neat. I guess I will also do it that way because that seems to be the way that works. And the other ways I was thinking of look really bad, so I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. That one specifically was really a play off of the trophies I built for Bricks Cascade this year.
Yes, I do have a picture of the Akimu one.
Yeah, and those themselves were really, really inspired by the opening video for G2, where it pans over the ancient city, and the villagers are like fishing and hanging out, and they're just like sitting on top of this like the stone columns, and like one of them's doing like what looks like yoga, and one of them's fishing, and like they're all just hanging out and like they're living. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea of being like, oh, here's their element, and here's where here's them interacting and being part of this world and being connected to all of it was something that really fascinated me. Mm-hmm. And I really like how those columns in the animation look, and I kind of want to do something a little different for conventions. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna build some trophies. I built these the villagers and the trophies are really simple, but I really wanted them to feel different from what you would get at most conventions trophy wise. Mm-hmm. And to feel representative of the theme, but also to feel more slice of life, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so that one, I was like, well, I built these trophies that kind of did this, but I want to do something more. And I also was like, my goal this year is to build build and post a MOC a month, because I've got years where I built 2 things, I've got years where I built 15 things, and I'm just trying to keep myself more consistent and keep myself more connected to the community this year. Mm-hmm. And I was getting towards the end of the month, and I was like, I have got to build something or I'm going to fail my own goal, and it is May. And we're not even halfway through. And so I just sat down on a weekend day I had off. Madison went to a quilt meeting for her like quilt guild here in town, and I just sat down and I think I was watching maybe I was watching Troll Hunters, and I was like, all right, and I just built that column and built the area around it, and then spent the next several days building the figure and building the area around it, trying to decide what it was that I wanted it to be doing. My original concept was it sitting there sketching in a book, but I couldn't find something that I thought I liked at that scale to look like a sketching utensil and also read visually in pictures or even from just a glance. So I went with him reading instead. I like to throw little tributes to longtime Bionicle friends in there too. So there's quite a bit of my friend Yannick, who people might know as, was it Toa Muffins or Tiom?
Oh,
yeah.
Or Tom DeCrone. There's quite a bit of that in there. He's just one of my best friends in the world, but he's globe trotting and he's always drawing and reading and posting selfies of himself from, this bank in Europe or this place, and I'm incredibly jealous of that life. And so, the idea here is that, I think I named the character after him, and I was like, hey, I've promised him a mock for years and years and years and years and years. Just like did my friend Ray, who I still haven't built one for, but he also won't listen to this, so that's fine.
Oh, I need to have him on. I won't tell him you said that, but I'm assuming like in a rage.
Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Oh man, okay, but I find that really interesting. You mentioned Toa Muffins, and I recognize the name. I recognize some of his creations, but mostly I just recognize the brown Toa Metru with the orange cow from the comics form.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, and he had so many mocks like that. He won a couple BZPower contests way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that was like canonized.
Yeah, he built the alternate pterodax that is the canon one.
Oh yeah, that was him, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, he's been at Brickfair several times too. I don't think he's going to make it again this year because, again, he's with a traveling acting group touring Europe.
My goodness.
Because he's extremely talented. He's extremely talented, but just all of the people that I know through this community are all just such incredibly talented people, and it's just it's both a joy and also extremely frustrating to be like, I build mocks, and then they all are like, well, I build mocks, and also I draw, and I do this, and I do that. And I'm like, that's so cool, I built mocks.
I know what you mean. Yeah. No, I definitely think this community attracts creativity and creative people, which makes a lot of sense in hindsight.
We've got people from the Bionicle community who, not to get too deep into this world real fast, we've got people from BZPower who helped draw and do some of the sprite work for some of the Homestuck online little walkthrough games.
Mm-hmm.
One of the people who drew the Homestuck side comic Paradox Space, she's an old BZPower member from a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Ray.
Was it Undertale?
Yeah, one of the old BZPower staff members did some of the guitar work on the Undertale game.
Really?
Yeah. Good old former BZPower moderator Smeagol4.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Did some of the guitar work on that. Yeah, and then, we've got Ray, who we were just talking about. He owns a caricature business in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his employees used to be Casey Green, who did the Dog on Fire This Is Fine comic.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently, he was not a great employee because he was always doodling little comics instead of doing caricatures.
At that point, he just needs to, obviously make some comics at that rate.
Right. But there's just such an incredible wealth of talent and just creative energy in the community, and it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so hard not to just to love it, even though sometimes it can be so incredibly frustrating.
Oh, yes. That it can. Especially recently, there have been... It definitely... You got to take a step back sometimes, just take a deep breath and go, community, I love you so dearly, but I need to exude some patience right now.
Yeah.
Especially after G2 ended. G2 ended. After that, we became a salt mine. So yeah, down here we breathe salt. Just, But yeah, no, it's a vastly creative place. Tons of incredibly skilled, talented, always creative people. And I figured now would be a good time to interject. You can find a lot of those people at Brickfair, Virginia this year. I've got a picture of the collage you have made. I don't recall. How many MOCs did you say you had registered already?
I think that collage says I have 23 when I made the collage, which goodness. I'll be honest, I spent way more time making than was really worth making, but I had a lot of fun making it. Yeah, so I had 23 registered when I made the collage. I have 24 registered right now because I just finished one that I will hopefully photograph today or tomorrow. And my like deep goal is maybe one more, but I don't. I've got like a week, and I work full time, so we'll see. We'll see if that happens. And I think I have a trip to the coast in this next week too, so we'll see. I'm gonna try, but at the very least, I'll have 24. And of those 24, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them are going to be new to just this year.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the largest amount of new MOCs I've ever brought to a convention in 1 year before, and I'm really excited about it because I really enjoy everything I built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a very colorful kind of display, at least looking at the collage. Thankfully, you did include the best for last, so it is at the end, the bottom right, the spider, a little snippet there. And yeah, no, it's easy to recognize your MOCs at the convention because, like, I've seen them twice there. It's like, oh, there they are. And I mean, listen, man, I don't mean to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm bringing 3, and they were all from last year. So I mean, I know exactly where you're coming from, of course, completely comparable. But no, it's great. No, I'm very excited to see a lot of these in person. Despite never having lived in Oregon, and despite never having been to a majority of Oregon, and despite, like many, never having pumped my own gas in Oregon, but that's another matter, I figure that I'll go ahead and bring... wait, do I not have it? I swear I had it. The Oregon MOC you made. Yeah, there it is. What the heck? It was all the way over there. This is one final thing I do want to touch upon, because I always love seeing stuff that incorporates states in an interesting, creative way. So very briefly, before we get into a few questions that we have, tell me a little bit about this, because you have a giant white stag right in front of this, an outline of the state of Oregon in system.
So that one is, that's a MOC I've wanted to build for literally years. It's kind of a 3D MOC tribute to a neon sign that is one of the big Portland, just one of our
iconic landmarks.
Yeah, one of our iconic landmarks. Thank you for the words, Madison, because I could not find them. It helps that she grew up here and I did not.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this sign when you cross over one of the bridges, and it's the state of Oregon in yellow or green, and then it's got the stag jumping over it, and it used to be for a sugar company, and then it was for a clothing company, and when that clothing company was sold out, the sign was bought by the company Made in Oregon, which sells only things made in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
People in Oregon have a lot of state pride in a weird way that's not obnoxious like it is in Texas or New York.
That, like, when you go into a tourist shop here, like, half the people will be locals who are just like, I want an Oregon shirt.
Yeah, everybody who lives in Oregon, especially even people who are from and grew up here their whole lives, they're all incredibly proud of Oregon. It's a cool state, but there's a sign. It's this big landmark, and I really, 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 for a long time, I wanted to do a tribute to that sign. My fondest dream of it was to have this big, like, sign that's got like the grid behind it and like all the girders and stuff. And I decided that was too much and too busy, and I want to do something a little bit more simple and iconic. And Bricks Cascade was coming up in like a week, and that's our big Portland convention. And it was its 6th year this year.
Yeah.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It was 7th year. Wow, that happened really fast. And I really wanted to have something to really celebrate both the convention and my home. Like, this is my adopted hometown. I didn't grow up here, but I chose here.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted something that celebrated that. And I thought that'd be a really cool way to do it. I just started building that stag, and I built it to purposefully balance on top of that clear stand, which I was so very excited when I connected to them and they held, and I was like, oh, thank God. It's holding on one minifig utensil connection there into a piece of Inika armor.
Oh my goodness.
And it holds, and I was incredibly happy about that. I have that Heart in Oregon tile that was custom printed as my avatar tile at Brickfair, Virginia, which is the cool thing that they do there, but it's also an iconic image here around the city. You'll see people be like, oh, I'm here, but my heart is in Oregon, and it's a very popular local symbol, and they sell shirts and stickers. We have one on our car.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to have an Oregon-themed centerpiece for my display at Bricks Cascade. And also, and this is real true on our here, I really wanted something that would bring people who otherwise wouldn't look at Bionicle over to look at Bionicle at the convention.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Brickfair, where there are 100 Bionicle builders and several hundred Bionicle MOCs.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those ones where it's me and it's Jason, who's XTCJ online.
Mm-hmm.
It's Trisha Keiru, who I built the Fox for. It's a few other people who aren't really super well known, but maybe they should be, because there's a lot of cool stuff there. And then sometimes we have the MOC convention, like the MOC circuit MOCs from BZPower on display. But there's not a whole lot otherwise there, and it's not entrenched in the culture of the convention the same way it is at Brickfair.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to build something that people would see from afar, and they would go, oh my God, that's the sign, and come over. And it worked really well for that. It was even in one of the news broadcasts where they were like, oh, come down to the convention and see all this Lego stuff, local news, ABC affiliate, or whatever. And it was in the background of those, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It was in the newspaper coverage of it in their little slideshow, and so I think mission achieved there. And it brought people over, and they actually walked around the Bionicle section, and they looked at it, and they had a good time. And even other attendees who otherwise wouldn't necessarily have come over, or they would have glanced at it, came over and took pictures. And that was kind of the goal, let's elevate Bionicle and let's elevate Portland at the same time.
Oh, no, I think you definitely, as you said, you accomplished that, and I think it's a very unique MOC. Like I said, I like a lot of estate MOCs, and I thought it was very creative, and I thought that it's a really great combination of construction and system. So it's obvious that the goal that you were looking for was easily achieved with it. So I wanted to bring that up, and that's a cool backstory. All right. Although it just occurred to me, that little print tile, you said the Oregon silhouette and the heart, I now feel compelled to make one, but for Idaho, but instead of a heart, it's just like a potato. That's it.
The guy who created that logo, he actually, because he's from Oregon, and he did the Oregon one first, but he has one for actually all 50 states.
Oh, wow.
I've got, it's like heart sticker. I've got an Oklahoma one hanging in the wall here, because that's where I grew up. And so, if they Google heart sticker, they'll find it. We're not soliciting.
I want the Idaho one. Because I can't remember, and I've looked at that site so many times.
And full disclosure, Madison's almost related to the guy who invented it, simply through this really weird family interchange where he had a kid with one of the spouses of one of her cousins.
What?
Sister. It's very odd.
It's Yeah, my cousin, her now ex-partner, his sister had a kid with the guy.
Yeah.
The
So
kid is adorable.
it's like I said, it's one of those weird things. Anyway, we have questions. Let's do questions.
Okay, yes, questions. Okay, so first question from Anthony Wynn. He says, Patrick, good sir, what is your favorite Lego set? And no Bionicle because that's too easy.
Ooh, that is too easy because I already had that answer ready until he said that. I'm so glad that most of your audience is construction people because the fact that I'm going to pick a recent set is going to drive system like AFOLs nuts. But the favorite set that I own that is my favorite set is probably the Ninjago movie Destiny's Bounty.
Oh.
Like that's a cool set. Like it took me forever to build. And I was really impressed by how long that build was. That was an incredibly involved and incredibly creative build. I've got it on display in our apartment. I don't ever plan on taking it apart. The Temple of Air Jitsu is really neat. It's a lot less impressive now that the Ninjago City set exists, but I can't afford it unless somebody on your audience wants to buy it for me. I have the green. I just really like Ninjago sets. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
I have the green Ninjago, like is it the NRG Dragon with the gold foil wing?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I've got that too.
I've got that one sitting on top of our fridge. I also really like Poe's Orange and Black X-Wing. It's the first X-Wing set I've ever owned, and I was a huge Star Wars fan for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally getting to own an X-Wing set because we couldn't afford it when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it was in my university's colors was very, very cool.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of good things about both of those, especially the Destiny's Bounty. A lot of people recommend.
There's a toilet with toilet paper next to it designed inside of it.
It's incredibly intricate.
It is so detailed and it is so incredible. And the little lantern, it's a great set, and people should go buy it.
Oh yeah, no, handedly, especially if you're a fan of Destiny's Bounty sets in general. I've heard that it is easily the pinnacle, and I've heard it's a great set. I'm partial to Lego Ninjago City. It's just immaculate, absolutely immaculate. A lot of what you said about the bounty is what I've said about the city. It's just great.
I mean that Ninjago City is it's one of those sets where I'm like, that's the dream. The dream is to just be like, I'm going to walk into the Lego store and be like, hello, good sir, I would like to spend all of my free money this month on this Lego set. But the fun part about being an adult is being like, yes, this is the money that I can spend on whatever I want. And the other fun part about being an adult is but then I don't get to go on the trips I want to go on. So because I have bills to pay. So I have not bought Ninjago City, even though I desperately want Ninjago City.
Mm-hmm. No, it's being an adult, you have all the money to spend on whatever you want, so long as whatever you want to spend it on is bills.
Yep. It's a very exciting time.
Oh yeah. I feel like we've kind of already answered this question, but the Mockingbird, which MOCing, he asks, what is your favorite non-Bionicle Lego theme?
I do love Ninjago. I buy more Ninjago sets than I do. I mean, obviously I buy more Ninjago sets than I do construction sets because there's only like 3 of them every 6 months now. But I love Ninjago. I love aesthetic. And I think it probably shows through too in a lot of what I build because I think that aesthetic is probably pretty close to like that weird like East meets West ninja like Western style. Like that's a thing I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. I can't help but agree. Ninjago sets I think they've always really kind of been quaint, but recently they've just been really, really good.
I mean, it does help that they did hire that incredibly talented designer, Nick Voss.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm looking forward to seeing him this year at Brickfair.
Yeah, he'll be at Brickfair, Virginia, everybody. Come to Brickfair and hang out with Nick Voss.
Do it. It's going to be so good. All right, so let's we got a few more questions here. Sonic Hadouken asks, question for everyone: favorite Hero Factory set?
Natalie Breeze. Oh,
From which wave?
actually, Madison Swift. She knows she's not really anymore.
She was not a set.
Europe had one got lit.
God, Hero Factory set. Man, my first thought is I really enjoyed Breakout Natalie Breeze. I thought that was a really cool set.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's actually real rough.
I like that we knock off half size one week.
We did buy a knockoff half-size one in Chinatown in Canada.
Oh my gosh.
There's also, man,
It's like it's easy.
I think
for
I
me
also
to say
really
character.
liked. Oh man, I don't think they all had enough consistent characters to have a good character.
Excuse me, I beg to
I'm
differ.
the bad guy.
Anything voiced by Mark Hamill was great. Good for Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to say Breakout Natalie Breeze or maybe Breakout Raka
Those are fair answers.
with
Yeah.
his bow. That was a great set too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nah, definitely. I'm a little more partial to the consistent character. You know, Jimmy Stringer. Breakout was really good. I mean, he was consistent. If by character you mean he was the country sound guy, but I digress.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a question that's you're either gonna really be able to answer this brilliantly, or this is gonna frustrate you. So from Kevin A. Hinkle, he asks,
Oh no.
"What's your go-to beverage from Starbucks?"
Oh, my go-to beverage is that's easy. I get a blonde roast sugar and lime cubes every single time I go.
I can confirm.
Yeah, that's my
Right.
go-to. Blonde roast has the most caffeine, and since they've discontinued both Ethiopia and Kenya, which are my go-to coffee blends, because I really enjoy the citrusy and acidic bright nature of African coffees, and I enjoy the way that they make me feel refreshed and energized. That the closest thing you can get to that is Veranda, which is our daily blonde roast. I enjoy putting some liquid cane sugar in it because I don't enjoy the way that coffee brewed through a metal paper filter tastes without some sweetener. I drink my coffee at home black, but I drink my coffee from Starbucks with some sweetener in it. And I toss a couple ice cubes in there because that stuff's hot, and I want to drink it right now.
I twitched just a little bit when you said how you take your coffee at home. I don't drink coffee. I haven't for almost a year now. Not because it doesn't agree with me or anything. I just don't. But even
It's
when
fine.
I did,
I had 4 cups today.
holy guacamole! Even when I did drink coffee, it was sweetened with something. But I cannot imagine having it without sweetener. My goodness.
I mean, I drink a lot. I mean, I don't drink a lot of coffee at home anymore because I usually just drink it on my days off, and I only have 2 of those.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 5 days, I'm at work managing my Starbucks. And since, in case anybody didn't know, I'm a Starbucks store manager. That's my job, which is why Kevin asked that, because he's a goofball. Yeah, he's a goober. He's a goofy goober. I love him to death, though. But I do drink coffee at home, not as frequently as I would like, because I do really enjoy the craft and the artistry and the history of coffee, and I do like the way, I love all of that, and I do, like I said, it sounded kind of jokey, but I really do appreciate African varietals of coffee more than anything else. They are the most outside of the normal when you think of coffee flavors. You think coffee, you think dirt, you think dark, you think bitter, and African coffees are usually almost lemony, citrusy. They're bright. They feel like they taste nice in the mouth. They have this syrupy body to them a lot of times, which is also fun because Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, and any coffee you've ever had in your entire life is from a plant that was bred from a plant that originally came from Ethiopia.
Well, today I learned.
Yeah, so you learned. In addition to being a fun Bionicle builder, I also am a coffee nerd. So there's that.
Well, now I'm compelled to ask. I don't know if you drink it at all, but do you have a favorite tea?
I like black tea. I grew up. My dad drank black tea. I mean, we literally couldn't leave the house unless he had tea with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he always drank either orange pico tea or just English breakfast. And I mean, in English breakfast, like it's like, oh, it's just the traditional English tea, but every brand that makes tea has their own slight difference in it.
Oh yeah. The
But
same with Earl Grey.
I am partial to basic black teas.
Mm-hmm.
I did grow up in Oklahoma, so I do prefer it to be iced and heavily sweetened.
Okay, that makes sense. I get you there.
My stepmom is from Georgia, and it is. If the tea isn't sweet, it is not something I'm going to drink. And the thing is you have to sweeten it while it's hot. You can't go to those places where they're like, here's your unsweetened black tea. You can add some sugar packets to it. No, you can't. It doesn't dissolve.
Oh yeah, nope. That's a common issue if you're in a restaurant with iced tea and you want more sugar in it. Good luck.
Ugh, it's the worst.
Yeah, no, I get you. No, I can't help but agree. Black teas, that's where it's at. Like I got a nice good old cup of delicious Earl Grey, which I should probably warm up because I haven't been drinking it. Whoopsie. Whew. All right. Before we go ahead and wrap up, just a few more questions, one of which ends with social media plugging. But Sonic Hadouken has another one. And what was your guys' first Bionicle set?
My first set was the original Golly. I dragged my dad to 4 different Walmarts because in Tulsa, where you buy things, is Walmart.
Yeah.
And because I wanted Kopaka, and I wanted Kopaka real bad. And by the time we got to the 4th one, there was no way I was going to convince them to the 5th one because they were all out of Kopaka. So I bought a Golly instead.
I hear that often. Usually I got a really high chance of guessing someone's first set. If it isn't Galley or some variant thereof, it's blue.
Uh-huh.
And
so, I mean, it's still a great set. It was my first one. Golly Nuva was my first Nuva set. Very first week they were out, it was Golly.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Madison, what about you?
Mine was also Golly, but because I was like, oh, there's a girl. That's legitimately what sold me on it, is that there was a female character and she kicked butt and she didn't take no sass. But my second, which happened in the same trip, was Aliwa, and so there's a fun story where in retrospect I was thinking about that one day, like years and years later. This was like 2001, so I was like 10, because I was there with my mom and my dad and my brother, and my mom went, oh, there's the green one, and like pointed at a basket and was like, that's the other one you want, right? And I was like, yeah, and she took it. And in retrospect, I'm pretty sure she stole it out of someone else's basket. Oh, no. So that's how I got Golly and Liwa in one trip. My brother was like scooping up a Kopaka and a Tahu, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I would like to apologize to that child who thought they were getting a Toa Liwa that day, because they definitely did not, because my mom...
Oh, I did not expect.
My mom, this is totally a thing she would do.
I did not wake up today expecting to hear a story about Grand Theft Liwa. This is...
Yeah.
Wow. But see, at the same time, that sounds like...
but there was no one by that cart, but it had other stuff in it, and I was like, oh my god, she just took it!
See, on almost a meta level, I feel like that's exactly something that would happen to a Liwa set. It's like, in the story, he gets all sorts of shenanigans. Everything happens to him. It's a running joke for years. It's this Liwa, he's like, oh boy, in a cart, gonna go home. Nope. Different home.
Psych? Yeah, we have a Cards Against Humanity custom card, very related to Liwa's shenanigans.
Yeah,
We do.
that's incredible. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no,
Is it
Hmm.
is it today Onua saved Liwa from blank?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even in G1, G2 rather. You gotta
Yeah, I was thinking
continue
that
the
too.
tradition.
Oh, good times.
Goodness, yeah, no, I like it. You see, that's something. Now I got to do this. I got to go to Brickfair and just have like a form, and just say, so tell me, what was your first Bionicle set? And it's just 3 columns. One's galley, one's blue, and the other is other.
The other one is just yes.
Yeah.
Is it Golly Blue or yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I just go around like with a clipboard. It's like, so tell me, what was your first Bionicle set?
That would be great.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. All right. Let me see. Go ahead and we'll do one more question before the plug-in. Oh, real quick. Kevin Hinkle, he wanted to chime in. Patrick.
Again.
Patrick, you should build a barista mock with detailed clothing/apron and minifig coffee cup.
You should call him right now.
Yeah, I
and
should
be like,
call him.
listen
Be
here, Mr. Hinkle.
Be like, Kevin, first of all.
Get back to your Pokemon.
Yeah, you know what, Kevin? First of all, I built a mock that I haven't posted yet that you're going to really like because it's very similar to your favorite theme, so suck it.
You should be a barista.
The gauntlet's been thrown down, Kevin. How will he respond?
Mr. Bionicle Barista.
I love Kevin Hinkle.
Kevin's
he's
great.
He's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to introducing him to the world of pineapple on pizza. Which, how do you guys feel about it?
Oh.
About what?
Pineapple on pizza.
Oh, no.
I was indifferent to it as a kid, and then I realized as I got older, I am definitely allergic to pineapple.
Oh my goodness. Okay, fair
Yes.
enough.
Yeah,
Like
same.
I'd eat it, but then I'd eat pineapple and be like, haha, it feels so tingly and weird in my mouth. And then one day, I think Pat was like, I don't think that's a good thing, Madison. I'm
No.
pretty sure you're allergic.
Okay, that's a very fair reason as to why one would avoid it. It's fair enough, but Patrick.
It doesn't belong on pizza.
Oh no.
As somebody who used to work at 3 different pizza places, pineapple pizzas don't cook correctly.
Oh,
It's too much moisture.
you wound my very soul. Don't listen to him, Kevin. I can't have you infecting him with your lies before I introduce him to the magical world of pineapple on pizza. I have 10 days.
It's okay. We were Kevin's first Lego fans he ever ate dinner with. So. And we went to a pizza place, so
We did. I just remember thinking, I was like, who is this guy?
I just remember feeling bad for
Like,
him.
and then, yeah, because we were just like, we weren't harassing him, but we were very excited.
We were like, welcome, Kevin, to your first ever A-Fall dinner. You're out at Brick Fiesta with the 5 Bionicle fans.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I remember constantly, before I knew Kevin, like all the time I would see BZPower articles with the Kevin minifigure talking about how excellent, like how great Kevin Hinkle is. And I'm just going here, who? And I met him and my entire world opened up. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense now.
Nita, like, who the flip is Kevin Hinklebrick?
Yeah, you just need to have,
Actually, it has to be Kevin A. Hinkle.
yeah, you're
That's
just
true.
going to have to get Kevin back on your show again if he hasn't already been on.
Mhm.
He's next week.
Oh, there we
Nice.
go.
Look at that plug-in.
Oh, we have to come up with a bunch of really goofy questions for Kevin.
Oh,
Yes. Oh, that's
Gotta get
great.
him back.
well,
Ooh, we'll just text him the whole time.
call him. Just, like,
Just gonna literally the whole time. Every time he says something goofy, I'm gonna text him and be like, "You said something goofy.
Do
That's
it.
that's 4."
Have a goofy counter.
what's your favorite Starbucks drink, Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin, you goofy goober.
Yeah, Kevin! I don't drink coffee. I'm not a part of it. Okay.
I love Kevin so much.
All right. Let's
Anyway.
see. Last question, and I think this is a really good one. The Last Revenant asks, would you consider building a storyline and some characters to go with it.
Oh, I already do that. You guys just don't know the story.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, all in my head. Literally, half of the mocks I build are all connected somehow, but they not enough for me to ever say anything more than that. Just like, yeah, here's a vague storyline. I feel like it's hard to grow up that deeply into the Bionicle community and not have some sort of like idea behind how they all relate.
Yeah, no, that's fair. No, at this point, whenever you make something, it's probably got some sort of a backstory behind it, and I think that's cool. I think I like that part of the Bionicle community and seeing mocks and seeing, oh, hey, wait, they've created a kind of story to go along with it. I think that's really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, guys, I think it's about time we wrap things up. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here and Patrick to sit down and talk about mocks and heck, even Brickfair a little bit. It's always fun for me to know more about the process, and especially someone who has such a solid grasp on Constraction MOCing and has been intertwining system. It's always a learning experience. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, it was a good 1 hour maximum.
Whoopsie!
Oops.
I said it was a rough estimate. All right, so where would you like people to find you on social media?
I am on Instagram as dviddy, DVIDDY. That is also my username on Flickr. And those are probably the places that I post mocks and that you should go look for me at.
Perfect.
Yeah, my Instagram also has fun, not Lego pictures of my normal life as well. So if you want to see all the places that I go and random pictures that I make Madison take at places that we go to, and Lego as well, then that's where I'll be. And I'll probably also be documenting in my Instagram story our Brickfair trip in a week and a half.
Yeah.
And then also maybe a fun surprise trip in September to some places that my followers might enjoy watching my story for.
Perfect. Awesome. In that case, links to both of those will be in the description below. I highly recommend checking them out if you've been interested in any of the creations you've seen here. So definitely make sure to do that. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all so very much for listening today. Hopefully you've had a good time. And if you have any questions over the week, make sure to send them over to my email, eljayjohnsen@gmail.com. And make sure to follow me on Twitter at the Eljay Johnsen. Remember, that's JOHNSEN. If you want guest announcements every Tuesday and regular updates and just a good time all around. So once again, thank you all so very much for listening, and we will see you all again next week. Everyone have a great day.